Hello everybody, welcome to Localite. I'm John Compton. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest on the show, and you probably have seen her on television before, and you'll remember Denise Brown as Nicole Brown's sister. And Denise, I thank you so much for coming on. I know that California is home, and you came out to the Gorge to talk about a very important subject, domestic violence, which is obviously very close to your heart, and if you could tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. It actually all started when Nicole was murdered, and that was back in June 12th, 1994. And yeah, it was my father. All of a sudden June 12th, that day I will never forget. But that day I was supposed to go to court, and I had a whole different issue. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and at 6:15 I remember hearing this scream, and it was my mother.
Really?
And I just thought, whoa, because I was living there at the house with her. Okay. And I ran back to my mom's room and I said, Mama, I said, what's going on? And she goes, your sister's been murdered. No, your sister was killed. I said, what? I said, who are you talking to? And it was a detective, Tom Lang, who called, and he said, and I grabbed the phone from her and I said, who is this? And I said, oh my God, he finally did it. And he said, who? And of course I said his name. And from that point on, it was like chaos, just craziness. And then all of a sudden, we go through her house, we go up to her house and we go through things, and we found her notes and diaries. And my father was looking through her things, and he called me back to his room and he said, Denise, he goes, take a look at this. This was, mind you, a couple of months later.
Okay.
And he said, take a look at this. And I started reading these notes and diaries that she left, and I said, oh my God. And I threw them down and I said, this can't be.
Because you had no idea
no.
that this was ever happening.
No, we were like this. We were so close. I mean, we were like, like the two musketeers running around all over the place.
Really?
And my friends were her friends were my friends. We were less than 2 years apart in age.
And she never expressed anything to you about it?
Nothing. But what was really interesting is that I testified to an incident of abuse. And this was where he had gotten so enraged, so crazy, because it was something that I had fed. I said, you really take Nicole for granted. And that was enough he went through the roof. Pictures started flying down onto the foyer. Clothes started coming. He ran upstairs, started taking clothes, get the hell out of my house, excuse my language, get out of my house. He had her by her throat up against a wall and said, get out of my house, or, I don't even remember what he said. I was screaming and crying, threw her outside, threw me outside, and then another friend of ours. And that was what I saw. This is what I testified to. But I thought it was an isolated incident, because when we took Nicole to the hotel, I said, okay, Nick, I said, we spent the night. The next day she says, Denise, she goes, I got to go get some things. I said, okay, I'll go with you. And she goes, no. She goes, it's okay, I'll go by myself. He's not going to be there. And I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. She goes, it'll be fine. 1 hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, 3 hours goes by, and I finally pick up the phone and I said, Nick, I said, what's going on? And she says, you know what, Denise, everything's okay. I said, what do you mean everything's okay?
And this is after the incident that you had witnessed that you thought was an isolated incident?
This was an isolated incident. This was the same incident that I had testified to.
Okay.
Okay, the same one.
Okay.
So I, taking her out of the situation, calling and saying, come on, let's go, get out of this, but never in a million years thinking that this was a cycle of abuse. I just thought it was isolated because I didn't know anything about the domestic violence yet.
And there was no domestic violence in your family?
Nothing.
Or anything?
I never heard my mother and father scream at each other. They never raised their voices, nothing. But he had it in his family. So the power and control of one human being over another, which is the cycle of violence, it's about power and control, the verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, the chipping away at somebody's self-esteem. You're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless, nobody's going to want you. That escalates into the physical violence, the hitting, the kicking, the punching, throwing up against walls. And then if a victim's lucky enough to survive that abuse, then there's possibly the honeymoon phase. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. The gifts, the flowers, and, the excuses. And that's the cycle I didn't know anything about. And that's when, after we found Nicole's notes and diaries, my mother and I, we went to a shelter. And it was a local shelter in Laguna. And we said, okay, what does this mean? what is this all about? You know, not understanding any of it.
Right.
Going, why did she keep this secret? Why didn't she come to us? Why didn't she tell us what was going on? You know, so they
Which
said.
Which had to have just been the most devastating and frustrating feeling, that you felt you knew your sister so well.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet this was something that she couldn't talk to you about.
No, because there's 3 things that I've learned from victims: hope, shame, and fear. The hope that things are going to get better, the shame of not wanting anybody to know, not a best friend, not a family member, and then the fear of where am I going to go, what am I going to do?
And the perpetrator knows those 3, huh?
You know what? Honestly, I don't know. I've never even asked them that,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they do, because it's about the
that.
power and control. And they work and they play that. And if you are afraid and they know your fears, you know, like that's why there's so much animal abuse as well. You know, they kill the animals, they threaten the animals, they torture these animals, saying, okay, this is going to happen to you. If you leave me, this will happen to you. So there's like the whole dynamic, not just the verbal, emotional, psychological, but there's the whole dynamic of, you know, the things that are being thrown. Next time it's going to be you, the pets, the children. If you ever leave me, I'm going to kill your kids. And at that point, they're not their children. They're not his children anymore. You know, they're your children, because it's something you love so much. So anything that you love, anything that you are close to, that's what they want to do away with. That's what they will threaten you with. And a victim of domestic violence, the only person that really knows how dangerous that person can be is that victim that's living with them. That's why they're in it. You know, you've heard that saying, walking on eggshells.
Right.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing. They're walking on eggshells every minute of the day. It's 24 hours a day. And, you know, with Nicole then going to the shelter started educating me about the facts of domestic violence. They gave me the books to read. They gave me all these things and all this information. But really, my true education comes from the women and children in shelters.
Okay.
Comes from the men and batterer treatment programs.
And I want to learn about that. I want you to talk about that and about your experience through those programs and what you've learned. So when we return with Denise, we will discuss exactly that. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Localite.